But it's the only way you're ever gonna learn. You look back and it's all in the past. I'm dwelling on the thoughts I cannot say to you. If I don't say the words, then maybe it's not true.
Good morning, welcome to NUFC Matters with me, Steve Wraith. Delighted to say, as always, joined by George for those were the days, 1956-57, I believe today, George.
It is, Steve. Morning, everybody.
Yeah, good to see
we're...
Peter Gould put this message up very, very early. He says, I'm looking forward to this morning's programme, as this season was when my dad took me to St James's Park for the first time to watch the game against Bolton. The next he took me to was Man City, and we won both games. He says, I also remember at the end of the season, we sold Jackie Milburn to Linfield. He says, I cried my eyes out. Devastating news for an 8-year-old fan to hear. I couldn't believe it. I remember that moment clearly. So, Peter, thanks for sharing it. Sit back in your chair or lie back and do whatever you do when you're listening to these shows. And over to George.
Good memories, Steve. And obviously coincide not too differently from me. I mean, I'm only a few years older than he is. Milburn, in fairness to him, did say at the beginning of this season it was his last. He wasn't going to carry on after this season. Imagine the upset there was because of the actually incredible impact he'd had on the club for the previous decade, not just a year. Also, it was a season when with the season before, 55, 56, we've been brought down with a bump. We're getting used to winning cups and doing all the tours because of the cups and all the rest of it. But in fact, that season was the first season since the war that the average gate at St James's Park dropped below 40,000. I think it was about 38. Now, this season, 56, 57, the predictions for us weren't that optimistic. I've got to say, there's a little surprise in that. And part of that was to do with Jackie Milburn saying that he was going. And there'd been other issues. I mean, the big issue in the Gallagher Corner, as far as I was concerned, and from my family that we're at, called the Chicken Road Academy, was the fact that we were still trying to run a team with Seymour as the titled manager, but the reality was the team was being run by a committee of directors, and it really didn't work. It wasn't very clever, and it didn't suit the players either, because they got all sorts of the wrong messages from it. And the big issue was, why on earth didn't they replace Dougie Livingston when they eventually got rid of him with another manager instead of hanging on with Seymour? They could have even promoted the assistant manager, Norman Smith. I think most people thought Norman would have done a reasonable job. However, that's what they didn't decide to do. They just ploughed on as Newcastle United will in their days. The big difference for me starting this season was, this is the season that I signed schoolboy forms for Newcastle United. So some of the people I'm talking about now, like Norman Smith, the first team trainer, and other names, are people by then I was getting to know quite well. I was going to St James's Park 3-4 times a week for training. And then eventually, when I got to the stage where they could play, when I got beyond 14, I started to play games in the ends team, in the junior team, and once or twice in the other professional teams. And that was, for me, that was imagine a schoolboy fan, and suddenly you're not just a fan, you're actually amongst it. It was a great time to be involved. However, the season got started with a home game against Portsmouth. Now, my lot always liked to see Portsmouth. We liked Portsmouth because we always thought Portsmouth were a good team, a good footballing team, and we played Portsmouth at St James's on the 18th of August, and we beat them 2-1. And the two goal scorers for us were Charlie Crowe and a young man called Harry Taylor, who I reckon most Newcastle fans won't even have heard of. That many will be saying, who? Harry who? Well, he got a season and then he was transferred to Fulham. He had a couple of good games, but in this one he actually scored a goal. And Charlie Crowe scored one of his rare goals, and Johnny Gordon scored for Portsmouth. Now, Johnny Gordon was one of a group of very well-known Portsmouth players, a Scottish international, and the Portsmouth team had Phil Gunter, Cyril Rutter, Tom McGee, Jimmy Dickinson, who was the current left-sided England defensive midfielder, Peter Harris, Gordon Dale, Mike Barnard, Jimmy Gordon, and Jackie Henderson, all international players either for England, Scotland, or Wales, and they played a brand of football which was very, very attractive. And of course, in our team, we had their former captain, Jimmy Schooler, who captained Portsmouth to the league championship twice before he came to us. So it was a fascinating game. 30,191 crowd. But it was a good game of football. That was the important thing for us as it went on. The season was up and down. Is the best way to, well, you'll see that as it develops. And by Christmas, actually, we were bumping along the bottom of the league. And indeed, if it was any consolation, the rivalry between us and the Mackhams was who was going to be bottom at Christmas, because it was a bad season for us and an even worse season for them. And even though they were still getting called the Bank of England club, the Bank of England players were not producing the goods. And so, as I say, we had a really up and down season. The next game I wanted to talk about was we went to Cardiff on the Wednesday, the 22nd of August. And there was optimism up here about that we might do something at Cardiff. Cardiff weren't regarded as a strong team. Well, that optimism was misplaced. And we saw what was the future when Cardiff turned over 5-2. And to rub salt into the wounds, of course, the Cardiff centre forward, Trevor Ford, scored a hat-trick. And of course, he'd just gone back to Cardiff from the Mackhams. He'd been at the Mackhams for a couple of years, and he went back to Cardiff. And in this game, he just played out of his skin and got a hat-trick. And Cliff Nugent and another Mackham, John McSeveny, I don't know if any people out there might remember him playing on the left wing for Sunderland. John McSeveny scored one of the other goals. So it was 5-0 before, well into the second half. And then Reg Davis, a little Welshman that played for us, very skillful player, very, very fit and agile player. Reg scored a couple of consolation goals for us, but by then we were well and truly beaten. The team's interesting. It's got one or two new names in. We're still playing the cup final team, basically. Ronnie Simpson, George Lackenby, who was a local lad playing fullback. Alf McMichael, Jimmy Schooler, Bob Stoker, Charlie Crowe, Jackie Milburn, Reg Davis, Vic Keeble, George Hannett, and Bobby Mitchell. And again, the managers down as Seymour and assistant manager Norman Smith.
There's a photo of the team there, George.
Oh, sorry. Yes, I should have started with them. 35,000 at Ninian Park at Cardiff. But they really did give us a turning over. One of the problems, I think, was that Cardiff had a very bright left winger called Brian Walsh, and George Lackenby was very inexperienced right fullback, and that was where Cardiff tore us apart. That's the squad. That's the 56-57 squad. And you'll see there's lots of photographs over the years of photographs being taken on these stairs of the squads. And that's the 56-57 squad. And along the back there's people I remember very fondly. I mean, Norman, starting at the very back at the left, Norman Smith, the assistant manager, Joe Richardson, one of the coaches, Alec Much, the physiotherapist, Benny Craig, another of the coaches, and Joe McCarthy, another of the coaches with the ends, the nursery team. All of the other characters in the picture are directors or players, and I love the way the directors used to love to get themselves on the picture. And old McKeag sitting in the middle there with Jimmy Schooler and Len White. Fascinating stuff. But that's how they used to do it, and as I say, I came across that. Now that's the squad that's the playing squad. That's the squad that you were more likely to see on the field. The only ones I'd point out is Ronnie Simpson still in goal, but to the left of Ronnie Simpson is Dick Keith, the Irish right fullback, who paired up very well with Alf McMichael as a fullback, or Ron Batty occasionally. And but that was the playing squad that at 56, 57.
Fantastic, great stuff. It's always good to look back at the photographs as well.
Absolutely, yeah. What's the next photograph, Steve? Is it? I've put that one on because the programs for this particular season, they didn't put who were playing on the front of the program. It was just a cover. You had to get inside to find out what was happening. So I've only put one of them on. So that's the program for all the home games, because it just they decided.
Frustrating, that isn't it? Frustrating.
Yeah, they did it once before, and I still struggle to understand why. But it is frustrating. I mean, you got to get into it before you know what's happening. But so I've only put one of them on. It didn't see any point in putting half a dozen or more than half a dozen of the home programs on when they all look the same. The next game I want to talk about was an away match at Roker Park with the Mackhams, and again we went with some trepidation. But as I say, at the time, it was debatable who was worse, them or us. And so we went, and I remember going with my crowd, my family, and we always went in the Fulwell end. And that's something I used to like it, and wouldn't happen now, is we just went in the Fulwell end like everybody else. Now you would never get in the bloody queue these days without there being some sort of ruckus where, yes, they knew were Magpies, but it didn't matter. They were there for the football like us. So we went into the Fulwell end, and as I say, with some trepidation. And within minutes, our fears were confirmed, because Len Shackleton was clearly on form and was going to make our life difficult that day. And within 10 minutes, he put Sunderland 1-0 up, and it knocked the stuffing out of everybody. And it took till nearly half time before our lads got their second win, sort of thing. And there's a 51,032 crowd for a derby match, which is good, even good in those days. But we didn't seem to be able to get into the game until nearly half time. And then, lo and behold, just after half time, Reg Davis scored within minutes of the kickoff. And that settled everybody down. And they then got the feeling that the game was ours if we pressed for it. And then, lo and behold, who should come out of his shell but none other than Jackie Milburn, Len Shackleton's best friend. And Jackie then gave them a hard time. And just before the final whistle, and it was quite hard on them because they fought hard to get a point, Jackie scored an absolute screamer from about 30 yards. And that was that. We won 2-1, and we were absolutely delirious. I mean, it was a win, and we, especially as we've gone thinking this is not going to be easy. This is going to be difficult. But it lifted us off the bottom and sent them slightly further down. So we, as I say, we made progress after that, and then the next. So we're thinking, well, this is positive. We're making progress. Is there a program next, Steve? On
Sheffield Wednesday, I think it is.
That's it. That's the one. That's what I wanted. Yeah, that's it. we then went to Hillsborough, the Sheffield Wednesday, who weren't playing particularly well. But we thought, well, after a win at Roker Park, surely we're going to get something out of this. But Newcastle being Newcastle, we didn't. we got turned over 4-0, and again brought us down to earth with an absolute bump. And the team was fairly predictable. Ronnie Simpson, Ron Batty, Alf McMichael, Jimmy Schooler, Bob Stokoe, Charlie Crowe, Jackie Bilburn, Reg Davies, Vic Keeble, George Hanna, Bobby Mitchell. And, that's nearly the cup final team. But by now, the cup final team, their legs were getting a bit long and tedious, I think. And Sheffield Wednesday's team was interesting because in the team was... this gave us cause for optimism when we see the team because they had a fullback called Ron Staniforth at right back, who was the England right fullback. Now, Bobby Mitchell had in past 2 seasons, when Staniforth was at Huddersfield, Bobby Mitchell had given Staniforth a real thousand. He'd really, really, in fact, in one of the games against Huddersfield, he gave him such a run around. The Huddersfield manager switched Staniforth to outside right and put somebody else in right back just to combat Mitchell. And so we thought, oh, well, Bobby Mitchell, I'd give him a hard time. Well, it didn't work like that. In this game, Staniforth was on his game and gave us a really tough time. Others in the Sheffield Wednesday team, I should mention, though, is Albert Broadbent, who was an England player and a player of some quality as well, good footballer. And then a couple of others who were on the fringes of England, the Shiner and Alan Finney. And then Redfern Froggatt, who was an old Portsmouth player. Him and his brother played for Portsmouth. And they all both played for England as well. But Redfern Froggatt was on his way out of his career, I think. And then a very young man with blonde hair and very short shorts. I tried to find a picture of him and I forgot all about it towards the end. A young man called Albert Quicksall. Now, he was with Sheffield Wednesday for a lot of years. Played for England, absolute quality young player, and a tough guy. But his trademark was he used to roll the waistband of his shorts up so that it must have been cutting his crotch in too. I mean, it was so tight, it was ridiculous. But no, that was Albert, and he was like that. In fairness to Albert, when after the Munich disaster at Manchester United, which wasn't long after this, Albert was one of the people who volunteered to go and play for Manchester United to help them out of a mess, and he did, and indeed guided them to a cup final very quickly. So that was Albert Quicksall, who actually was the star of the day. He made us stand up and take notice, no doubt about that. With Shiner, Quicksall, Broadbent, and Finney scoring the goals, we never actually got near scoring a goal, to be perfectly honest. So that was as I say, brought we back down to earth and to some sort of reality of where we're going. The next game, I don't think there's a program for the next game, but the next game I had to talk about is when we played Manchester United. Now,
we have got a program for that.
I think that's the away game, though.
Right, okay.
Yeah. The Busby Babes are coming again, and everybody wanted to see them. They were absolutely fantastic, and so we again weren't sure how a lot were going to perform against them having had a thrashing at Sheffield. We thought, well, this is going to be difficult as well. But lo and behold, the team came out and really went for it. Predictable team: Ronnie Simpson, Dick Keith, Ron Batty. Jimmy Schooler was injured, and a lad called Stan Keary came at right half, right midfield, and Bob Stokoe, Charlie Crowe, and then a new lad, another pit lad, local lad came into the team called Gordon Hughes. And Gordon was short, very, very quick, very fast, and had a blonde curly mop. He didn't need a perm, but Gordon's mop was really curly. Although by the time he left Newcastle, he hardly had any left at all. And then Reg Davies, Jackie Milburn in the middle, George Hanna and Ken Pryor. Now that's another local lad from North Shields. Ken Pryor was a local lad who did well in the juniors and in the ends, and then Newcastle let him go. He went to, I think he went to Millwall, and then eventually we bought him back for a few £1,000, and here he is back in the first team. Ken didn't last long though; it wasn't long before he was on his way again. But we actually drew 1-1 with them. Jackie Milburn gave us the lead, and then Whelan scored an equaliser in the middle of the second half. Their team was the Busby Babe team: Ray Wood, Bill Fuchs, Roger Byrne, Mark Jones, Eddie Coleman, Mark Jones, Duncan Edwards, David Pegg, Dennis Viner, Tommy Taylor, John Berry, and Liam Whelan. And they were fantastic. I mean, a lot of those lads were still teenagers, and yet they were undoubtedly the team to beat in the league that year, and everybody wanted to beat them. And I think, as I've mentioned before, the Manchester United setup was interesting as well. Matt Busby was the manager, but he had 3 assistants: Jimmy Murphy, Bill Inglis, and Tom Curry. Jimmy Murphy got the credit for managing the forwards, Bill Inglis the defenders, and Tom Curry was the tactician. And so they worked with Matt Busby in looking after the team. And 50,000 crowd for that match, which was a really good match. The next game, is it an Arsenal programme next, or?
Well, the way that you sent us them and in the order was Manchester United first, but I have got an Arsenal programme there. Right.
Okay, that's the next one I was going to talk about. So having got a pick-up of a draw out of Manchester United, everybody thought, well, is this going to be the start of something good? But and it seemed to be. We went to Arsenal expecting nothing, and lo and behold, we beat them 1-0 with 46,000 at Highbury, and Tom Whittaker was their manager, and the Arsenal team was a very powerful team. Kelsey, Welsh goalkeeper, Bill Dodgen, Jimmy Bloomfield, Peter Goran, Derek Tapscott, Danny Clapton, all playing international football regularly. And our team was predictable: Simpson, Keith, Batty, Stan Keary, because Scooter was still injured, Bob Stoko, Charlie Crow, and then we're back to Jackie Milburn, Reg Davies, Vic Keeble, George Hanna, and another left winger, Bill Punton, who was a young Scottish winger who looked as though he was. I think the club were hoping he would eventually take over from Buddy Mitchell, but it didn't happen like that. But he was a decent enough lad, and we beat them 1-0. George Hanna, right at the death, got a goal and didn't give Arsenal time to come back. So everybody was thinking, well, we're on 2 wins in a row here. We're on a high. The next one I've got is Preston. Have you got a Preston programme, Steve?
There you go.
Yeah, that's it. Lovely. Now, my lot wanted to go to Preston. Our lot wanted to go to Preston because they, 2 reasons. One, they like the Deepdale as an old-fashioned football ground, and they like the way Preston played their football. Interestingly enough, there's another programme that doesn't tell you who they're playing. It's just a programme, which frustrating is what you said, and I think frustrating is right. Anyway, we went to Preston with 2 wins behind us. Thought, well, Preston are, they're for the taking, really. But it didn't work out like that. Preston were really on the metal and gave us quite a hard time. And they beat us 1-0. It wasn't a particularly good game, I gather, from our lot when they came home. And to rub salt into the wounds, the goal was scored by a bloke called Tommy Thompson, who had been released by us some years before and went to Preston. Preston team, of course, included some stars of the future. Gordon Milne, who we knew quite well. Jimmy Baxter, Tom Finney, who was England regular for decades, never mind years, and Ray Evans and Les Campbell, all good high standard players. But on this particular day, they didn't give us much to get into the game. The manager was Cliff Britton, who was a well-regarded football man in football in those days. And our team: Ronnie Simpson, Dick Keith, Ron Batty, Stan Kerry, Charlie Crow, Bob Stokoe, and Harry Taylor, Reg Davis, Vic Cable, George Hannah, and Bobby Mitchell. No Jackie Milburn that day. He was injured that week. But we lost 1-0, and it was quite a disappointing game. Now, I think with reference to the lad that wrote in his comments about the thing, the next game I was going to talk about was the game against Manchester City at St James's Park, and I think that's one he mentioned, because City turned us over well and truly. It was in October, and they just didn't let us into the game. Simple as that. And they didn't, they'd have all our stars playing. I mean, Bert Troutman wasn't in goal. The reserve goalkeeper was in goal, but the rest of the team was the regular team. Right back, it should have been John Meadows, but he's still 2 years later having problems with the knee injured at Wembley in the cup final, and it's 2 years on from there. But the half-back, the midfield and central defence, Roy Little, Dave Hewan and Roy Paul. Roy Paul was the Welsh captain, great half-back. And in right-sided midfield, a young man called Don Revie, who became quite famous later in his career. And Jack Dyson, Paddy Fagan, Roy Clark, and little Bobby Johnson, who scored the goal against us in the cup final at Wembley. But they 34,800 at the match at St James's, but they just didn't let us into the game. They played us off the park, really. But it was disappointing. But it brought us back down to earth again with slight bump. So I'm glad I covered that one. If it covers that lad's memory. Next one is a Charlton away game. It's a Charlton program there somewhere. Yep, that's great. Charlton were playing terrible and had been thrashed by the Mackem, believe it or not, 8-1. And we thought, well, there's goals here. We're bound to do something here if the lads are up for it. And we went to the Valley thinking that there was a possibility, but it was a doer game. It was a very, very doer game indeed. And Bobby A scored their goal, and we struggled until middle of the second half. A screamer from another local lad called Bill Curry, who was now playing in the team occasionally, and we heaved a sigh of relief that we're even going to get a point out of it, because it was such a dreadful game. 21,400 at the Valley. Their stars at the time, well, the centre forward was a South African called Stuart Leary. Derek Ufton was a England centre half. Don Townsend, an England fullback. But apart from that, they were fairly ordinary team, really, is the way I'd describe it. But we imagined, having got a thrashing off the Mackems, that we would be next. We would get some goals next. Our team: Ronnie Simpson, Dick Keith, Alf McMichael, Stan Keary, Bill Patterson at centre half, and Tommy Casey. And then we came to Len White, Reg Davis, Bill Curry, George Eastham coming into the team, having signed from Ards later in the previous season, and Bobby Mitchell. And while we were hoping that we would get something out of it, the most we could get was a point, and some would say we were lucky to get a point actually. The next game I wanted to talk about was Spurs. There's the Spurs program there. That's great. Thanks, Steve. Having got a point at Charlton, we thought, is it possible we could get a point at Spurs or even better? But no, Spurs were playing well and bringing on some good, strong young players, like the centre forward Bobby Smith, who became quite famous, and names like Tony Marshall, Tommy Harmer, Danny Blanchflower, Mel Hopkins. I mean, names which were household names by the time Spurs won the title a few years later on. And they beat us 3-1, well and truly. Bobby Smith 2, George Robb, and then Len White got a consolation just before the end. 51,700 at the Spurs game. And the only one of our lot went to the Spurs match. That was my Uncle Tom. And he came back, to say he came back disappointed is putting it mildly. Then I'm going to move on a little bit to Saturday the 22nd of December in a home game against the Mackhams, the return game against the Mackhams. Now, this was a game which, again, we faced with some trepidation. We know we hadn't performed very well, but we're at the Christmas time. And as I said earlier on, the bottom of the league was either them or us. That's how bad we were in this particular season. And so we faced them at St James's Park. It was icy. It was foggy. It was misty. It was bloody cold. I know. I remember that standing at the Gallagher corner. But the big thing for me is that playing centre forward in this game was Alec Tate, who was my teacher at school, who was coaching my school team. So all of the school team were there. We're all there in the Gallagher corner, come to watch Alec play for the first team. And what a game he played. We beat them 6-2 and Alex scored a hat-trick. Len White and Reg Davis, Tom Casey scored the other goals. And Sunderland's Scottish attacker Charlie Fleming scored their 2 goals. But really they were never in it. It really was a hammering. So the crowd was was for a derby was small. 29,000 for a derby is very poor. But I think part of that was there was doubt about it being on. Was it on? Was it off? Was it on? Was it off? Was it foggy? You know, apart from all the snow and ice, there was fog as well. So people really wondered whether a game would actually go on. But it did, and the result was a resounding one. Our team was interesting. Ron Simpson, Dick Keith, Ron Batty, Jimmy Schooler's back, Bob Stokewell, Tommy Casey, and then we've got Len White, Reg Davis, Bill Curry, Bill Punton, Alec Tate and Bill Punton and Bill Curry. Now there's another forward line which has 3 centre forwards in it. Bill Curry, Alec Tate and Len White were all really centre forwards, and yet they were playing across the front line. Whatever they were doing, they did it well that day because we went home significant winners against the Mackhams. I don't know what is there another programme there now, Steve?
Got Manchester United away and Man City away.
Right, okay. We had a couple of poor games against one poor game against West Brom, and on my Boxing Day, on my birthday, we beat them at St James's 5-2. Reg Davis 2, Schooler, Punton and Casey, and West Brom, Derek Kevin and Stuart Williams scored for them. West Brom were on the wane. They had been a top side, but some of the names, you know, even in this team, Don Howe was still a right back who played in the World Cup in '66. He's just a young man there. This is 56, and Ray Barlow, Maurice Setters, Jimmy Dudley, Ronnie Allen, Derek Kevin, all England internationals, and give us such a hard time. Right, I'm now at the Manchester United away game, because this is where we had some other indifferent results against ordinary opposition, and then we went to Manchester United in the January with some concern that what was going to happen, and we're right to be concerned because they just took us apart. It was a 6-1 thrashing is the only way to describe it. David Pegg 2, Liam Whelan 2, and Dennis Violet 2. And Jackie Milburn, just before the end, scored the consolation for the Magpies. They really did give us a turnover that day. And it was hard to take, but inevitable. They were really, the Busby Babes were really on form, and didn't let us get into the game apart from anything else. And our team was fairly predictable, although one or two new names creeping in. Simpson, Keith, Batty, Schooler, Malcolm Scott at centre-half, who some people might remember. I certainly remember him. Charlie Crowe. And then in the forward line, we had Len White played on the right wing, Bill Curry inside him, Jackie Milburn in the middle, George Eastham inside, and then Bobby Mitchell. But they really never got the chance to get into the game. 45,000 at Manchester United that day, and what a game they played. They were just outstanding. And I'm glad to say that I feel ever so proud and pleased to have been able to see the Busby Babes in action at St James's Park and elsewhere. And what a tragedy it was that we then came to a home game against Arsenal, and we weren't sure what was going to happen here because Arsenal were playing well by then. But we managed to beat them 3-1. Len White 2 and Bill Curry. It was a good game, but the outstanding player was Len White. That was when we start to see what Len White was really capable of, not just at scoring goals at centre forward, but he had the ability to go from one end of the field to the other and take the ball and slot it in the net. We then had a 2-1 home defeat by Preston, which was a downer, and then came the return game against Charlton. I think is that the match that I had mentioned. He said he had 2, Manchester City, and was Charlton the next one. I think it might have been. Anyway, we got Charlton, and Charlton were now bottom of the league. It was they were propping Sunderland and Newcastle up at that particular time. They'd had a bad run of results, and this visit to St James's Park was going to be no different. 21,000 at the game, which was poor for St James's, but then I think it was a period of really bad weather. We beat them 3-1. George Eastham, Tommy Casey, and Jimmy Schooler and Sam Lowry scored their consolation. Jimmy Trotter was their manager, and then again another famous football name, a great tactician and somebody who managed a lot in various teams across the first division. With a Stuart Mitchell in goal, a young Scottish goalkeeper that Seymour brought down, I think, thinking of the future, thinking he would replace Ronnie Simpson. And then Dick Keith, Alf McMichael, Jimmy Schooler, Bob Stoko, Albert Franks at fullback. Now, Albert Franks is somebody that we bought a couple of seasons before from Sunderland. I think they only cost about 500 quid. But Albert was I think today would just call him a squad player. Albert could fit in anywhere across the back five, I think, basically, which made him useful sometimes. And he played in this game. And the front line was fairly predictable. It was Len White, George Eastham, Alec Tate, and Bobby Mitchell and Reg Davies. But the Schooler and Casey and Eastham were the goal scorers. It was a good win, but it wasn't a brilliant match. Charlton were clearly fighting for their lives and made it difficult. I'm glad that we beat them. I'll now go to. Is there a Manchester City programme there? Which
there you go.
Now that's the FA Cup one. Keep that back. This is the league game. I couldn't find the league programme. We went to Main Road expecting to get a thrashing, have a bad time, because they'd beaten at home. And lo and behold, the lads just turned it on. Bobby Mitchell was on his best, and we beat them 2-1. Ken Bonds put them in the lead, and we got Bobby Mitchell and Len White got us to 2 winning goals, 25,000 at the game. But it was a surprise that we won, and everybody was cock a hoop about that. So we thought, well, here we go. Is there a are we pulling away from the bottom? Now this is the game that the lad talked about. Bolton Wanderers at home, I think he talked about, when we beat Bolton 4-0. And this, I think, kind of cemented the fact that we weren't going to go down, because we were still hanging on. But this 4-0 win against Bolton was an important one, and it as I say, it made us feel that we were going to hang on and not go down. Jimmy Schooler, Jackie Milburn, Reg Davies, and Len White scored the goals. Bolton was virtually their old cup final team, but their young centre forward, who was tearing the league up occasionally, was Nat Lofthouse, of course, a name that people will remember. And on the left wing, Doug Holden, a very clever winger who played for England. But that 4-0 against Bolton was a game to enjoy, because we outplayed them, and you know, when the team's playing like that, you can do nothing more than enjoy it. It was really good. It was fantastic. So I think I'm trying to see where I am now. In between all of this, typical Newcastle, between the Manchester United and Arsenal game, we played a friendly against Greenock Morton. I mean, you know, we're struggling sometimes to get the team out, and yet we're playing friendlies against Scottish teams. Add to that, we also entered this Anglo-Scottish League, which eventually became the Anglo-Scottish Cup. So we had 2 games against Hearts, 2 against Hibernian, and 2 against Partick Thistle. And it just beggars belief what the directors were thinking about. All those friendlies thrown in with a very, very difficult league program, a league program that was struggling to survive against. The next game I wanted to talk about was the Spurs home game against Spurs, because again we thought this would be very difficult, having had a bad time at Spurs, but the lads turned it on, and we got a 2-2 draw. That's all right. I'm the same. When I'm doing this for Steve, I have to remind myself I have to do a lot of reading, believe you me, to bring it all back to me, even though I was there, most of them. 2-2, Reg Davies and Jackie Milburn put us 2-0 up at half-time, but Terry Medwin and Alfie Stokes equalised for Spurs in the second half. A good football game. Spurs were always a good football team. The manager at that time was Jimmy Anderson, but they had adopted a style which became known as push and run, which I think most teams play as normal now in the Premiership, where you push it and you run on and you receive the ball back. It's as simple as that. But in those days, Spurs were the first exponents of it, and it was nice to watch. But anyway, we got 2-2 out of Spurs. Now I think we're now getting to we're now getting towards the stage of the FA Cup, and we played Manchester. We got drawn in the third round against Manchester City, and we at home, and we thought, well, we've got a chance because it's at home. But we drew 1-1, and everybody thought, well, that's it. I mean, we're going there in the midweek to get to a replay. And I think the program that you've got is the replay program, Steve. Yeah, that's it. And we didn't think that we were going to win this replay. It was more than we could imagine, and the thing that I'm looking for. Yeah. I found on the Manchester City website their commentary, and they still say on their website that it's the best FA Cup tie that there was ever at Main Road, which is quite a compliment, even all these years later. And they've still got it up on their website as the best cup tie that's ever been at Main Road. And the reason for that was straightforward. We went there, and within 20 minutes, Manchester City were 3 up. I mean, Johnson scored 2, the little guy who scored in the cup final. Paddy Fagan scored the second, and then Bob Stoko scored an own goal. 20 minutes, 3 up, and everybody thought, well, let's get the half time quick and see if we can stem the tide, and do something. But they came out after half time, and they were a different team, and it was as though Jimmy Schooler as captain was. It's almost like he had a horsewhip. He had them jumping through hoops. It was that kind of change, and indeed the comment on the City website is that what still stays vividly in our minds is the leadership shown by Jimmy Schooler, a player we love to hate, and a lot of clubs did, because when Jimmy Schooler tackled somebody, they stayed tackled. Without him, the Tynesiders would never return the game around. He threatened and cajoled and got the best out of his team in terrible conditions. Main Road was a dreadful pitch. You're up your ankles in mud most of the time. Steam was rising from his massive thighs and his balding head. And rather like our own Roy Paul, I regard Schooler as an inspirational captain. I can't imagine either of them jumping into the air to avoid a tackle, wearing a sarong or painting their nails pink. That really is an accolade from an opposing team to Jimmy Schooler. But he pushed them forward to the point where they got Len White scored. Tommy Casey scored a real humdinger. Alec Tate scored, and we thought, well, 4-3, we're on our way here. But then, lo and behold, came the Stoke own goal that levelled things at 4-4. So we went into extra time. Then just before extra time, lo and behold, Dick Keith got a really bad injury and had to go off. So that was Dick Keith off. And so we played the extra time with 10 men. So we thought, well, all that hard work has gone up in smoke now. We're never going to survive now. But survive they did. And the hero of the hour was none other than Billy Curry, the local lad, who scored an absolute screamer towards the end of the second period of extra time. And then after that, of course, it was just backs to the wall. It was 10 bodies on the goal line, blocking Manchester City. But we came away with quite a famous victory, and a one which as I say, stays as much in the minds of Manchester City as it does with us. The next game, of course, was the fourth round of the FA Cup, and that was against Millwall. Now, I think the programme for Millwall should be next, Steve. Yeah. Yeah, that's right. At the Den, Millwall, a good third division side, but one we thought, well, surely we've got a chance here. And, you know, as on Tyneside, the feelings of having beat Manchester City in that heroic way at being Road, we thought, well, hell, Millwall should be a doddle. Well, we keep forgetting that we're Newcastle, and just when we think we're up, they have the habit of knocking we're down, and they certainly did at Millwall. We really didn't do ourselves any justice at Millwall, other than once again, as I've said, another historical things we've done. Here's another ground where we create a record. I think there's a pictures next of the stadium, Steve. Yeah, that's Ronnie Simpson getting out of the net, and you can see how the crowds bulged onto the pitch just about round the outside of the ground at the Den. And the next one,
that's amazing photo of that.
There's 10,000 on the bloody floodlights. It's incredible. And look at the scoreboard as well around the other side. And if you look at the wall around the outside of the ground, there's people standing up there. Now, the official attendance is 49,000. Well, I reckon the unofficial attendance was probably more like 60, because look at how packed they are in there. As I say, there's nearly 10,000 on that bloody floodlight. It's just incredible. I think the next one's another one of the floodlight, actually.
No, it's that one.
No. Yeah, it's a
that one.
Yeah. That one. Yes. But and just as you know, put the players in at the same time. I mean, you can see the kids are actually sitting on the track, but they're actually sitting in the back of the net. It's so crowded. So record crowd of 49,000. I think they could add another 10 under that. And the coloured one was a watercolour painting I came across by a Millwall fan, and I thought it was worth showing because it's quite clever. I think watercolours are notoriously difficult to get action things in. But what I wanted to show to draw your attention to is look at the bodies on the top of the stand. That's people sitting up there. Can you imagine people sitting on the top of the stand at St James's? And look around the boundary wall. All the bodies standing on the boundary wall. I mean, it just beggars belief. There's no way would that game be allowed to be played today. It wouldn't happen. It wouldn't happen. So sadly, that was the end of the cup run that year, and it was very, very disappointing. They were third division. That's right, and it was disappointing because having, as I say, beaten Manchester City so heroically, everybody thought, well, we'll do it. You know, it's not a problem. So we plod on, and ever more friendlies, of course. We played a friendly against the British Olympic team, and you know, do we really need this? But thrown into the middle of that league programme. We played the British Olympic team, but there's some names in worth mentioning, like Bob Hardesty from Bishop Auckland, Derek Lewin, who was from Bishop Auckland but ended up at Chelsea, James Lewis, who was Bishop Auckland but also ended up at Chelsea, Harry Sharrett, the goalkeeper, was Bishop Auckland and ended up at Chelsea. Charlie Twizzle from Plymouth Argyle, and Mike Pinner, who was from Pegasus. There was one or two people from Pegasus. Pegasus, in case people don't know what they were, is an amalgamation of the teams of Oxford and Cambridge universities, and they played in the Isthmian League and at a fairly high grade in the Isthmian League, and quite regularly won the FA Amateur Cup. They're not the strength that they used to be nowadays, but that's who Pegasus were. So we played the British Olympic team in a friendly. In fact, I think one of the next pictures might be to do with the British Olympic team. No, that's from the Anglo-Scottish League and Cup, and that was the Aberdeen team that played in it, which is interesting. That's the British Olympic team playing Bulgaria in a pre-Olympic match, and it wasn't long after that, of course, that they decided they wouldn't put a British team in the Olympics because other countries were putting their professional teams in, basically, or the under 23s in. I think the next team might be British Olympics as well. Next picture, yeah, that's them arriving in Newcastle before their friendly match with us, and with their smart Olympic blazers on, which is fantastic in football that I'm glad to have seen. But in terms of Newcastle United, which was a big interest, you think, well, what the hell's the directors playing at? We've played 42 league games, or going to play. We played cup ties, and hard cup ties at that, and then we've got Anglo-Scottish League. We've got Scottish friendlies. What do we need more friendlies for? I just in
Crazy,
terms of
isn't it?
well, in terms of the current clamour for what's happening about friendlies, and when you hear even you hear pundits saying, "Well, these players are playing too much football." Those lads in those days, as you and I've counted before, sometimes 60 games if we went to a cup final.
Imagine a modern day footballer being asked to do that now.
Yeah, I mean, it would incredible. What's the next picture, Steve?
Next one is this.
That we went to Wolves the last two games of the season. We got beat 2-0 by Dennis Wishaw, who's the Wolves star, and Billy Wright, of course, was the captain of England. Bert Williams, the England goalkeeper. But the beat us 2-0, and we really were never in the match for that. So, and the last two games was we played over the Easter. We played Chelsea.
There we go.
That's the away one, yes, yeah, and well, that's the 22nd of April. But on the 19th of April, we played them at St James's Park. Yeah. Now, this is the FA, in their wisdom, thinking, well, we'll play the two games close together. But imagine the travel for the fans of both teams, you know, on what is obviously Good Friday and then Easter Monday, having to go back and forward to London for two football matches. It's absolute crazy. I mean, I don't know what they were thinking about, but that's what it was. It was Good Friday. It was the one at St James's where we won. We got beat 2-1. And then we went to, for our last game of the season, in April, we went to Stamford Bridge and sadly got beat 6-2. The only notable thing about that game is that one of our goal scorers was Jackie Milburn, and that was the last goal he scored as a player of Newcastle United, because that was his final game. Len White scored the other, but Chelsea just took us apart. It was something that they were enjoying a good season, and 6-2, and that was it. As I said, the saddest thing is that was Jackie Milburn's last goal and last game. The season ended with Manchester United as champions. Surprise, surprise. 103 goals for they scored. 103 for and 54 against, and 64 points out of their 42 games. Previous seasons, we had been scoring 89, 90 goals, as you might recall, Steve.
Yeah.
But this time, 67 for, but 87 against, which is why we're where we are. And 36 points. Relegated were Charlton, as I said, they were heading down. And Cardiff, who turned us over 5-2, were the other team that went down. And that they were a surprise. But the Mackems just scraped through by 3 points. They had 32 points and Cardiff had 29. And we were 17th on 36. But even Manchester City were behind us on 35 points at 18. And Portsmouth 33, Sunderland 32. So it was a disappointing season, but a one which wasn't a surprise. I mean, we were up, we were down. As I say, by Christmas, most people thought we were on our way out. I had something else I was going to talk about, and that was the ins and outs that year. We had. No, I haven't got it at hand.
We've got a couple of photos spare. This one, George.
Right, okay. That's the Manchester City replay, and that's Little Johnson scoring his first goal against us in that cup replay, and Dick Keith is the number 2 who got injured and had to go off. But that's Bobby Johnson. Now this is for people who have heard me in this series and last series talking about Bert Troutman, the Manchester City goalkeeper. What a great goalkeeper he was. Not everybody remembers that he was German, of course. And as a young man in 1938, like so many young Germans, he joined the Hitler Youth and was a member of the German paratroop brigade for most of the war until he was captured and taken to brought to a prisoner of war camp in England. While he was in prisoner of war camp in Cheshire, he got permission to play football, and he played for local Cheshire teams when the Manchester City scouts seen him, and they offered him a contract, and he got permission off the British government for him to play for Manchester City after the war, and he stayed, and the rest is history. But this picture's on because they played Birmingham in the cup final the year after we beat them. They went back the next year, and that picture is Bert Troutman coming out and saving at the feet of the Birmingham centre forward. And in that challenge, he broke his neck. Now, he didn't realise he broke his neck, and neither did the trainer. And he played on for 25 minutes, the rest of that game, with a broken neck. And how lucky he was to survive that. But also, what a hero. You know, he knew there was, there was such things as substitutes as those days. But he played on and became a Manchester City hero, and rightly so. He did a lot of local work with young people playing football to the point where he got an honorary OBE off the Queen. The work was so highly regarded. So I thought it was worth showing that picture of Bert Troutman because I've mentioned him several times on here, and what a great character he was. Is there anything else, Steve?
Final picture was this one.
Right. This is very personal. As I said to you in the beginning, I'm now at the club as a schoolboy, and I'm training 2, 3, 4 times a week at St James's Park. I'm training with Norman Smith, the first team trainer, Benny Craig, Joe Richardson, Joe McCarthy, the youth trainers, and occasionally playing in the ends team once I got past 14, and then occasionally in some of the professional teams. And of course, Alec Tate was my school teacher. So sometimes Alec and I, if you didn't know where you were playing, you had to go to St James's Park on a Saturday and be told where you were playing, which team you were playing in. And this particular Saturday, I'd played for the school on a Saturday morning and jumped into Alec Tate's little MG midget, and up we went to St James's Park with Alec telling me, "No, I'm not sir when we're up here." I'm not sir. I'm just call us Alec, George, because I couldn't get out of the habit of calling him sir. He's a teacher. I mean, he was a maths teacher, English teacher, and PE teacher, as well as being the coach of the football team. Anyway, we went up to St James's, and Alec was coming back from injury, and he ended up playing in the Newcastle B team. Now, anybody that doesn't know the history of the club, in those days, we had the first team, we had the reserves in the Central League, we had an A team in the Northern Alliance, we had a B team in the Northern Combination. We had the Ends nursery team in the Northern Intermediate League. And we had the Newcastle Juniors in the Newcastle District Junior League. So there were lots of teams for people to get experience in. Alec went off to play with the B team. And Benny Craig said to me, "Yeah, come in with me." And he got us in the car and he took me to Wallsend to North Road, which was a ground where Newcastle used to play. It was a ground that used to be owned by St Luke's. It's now got the Lindisfarne Club. That might be something that people recognise. That's where the Lindisfarne Club is these days. Well, that used to be a Newcastle United football ground. So I'm going down and Benny says, the A team need a left back, George. So I've told him, I'm bringing you down so you'll get a game in this. And they were playing Whitley Bay in this Northumberland Senior Cup. And I got to the dressing room and I said to Benny Craig, well, who's running the team? Oh, he says, just Jackie Milburn, man. And I said, what? He says, the manager's Jackie Milburn. So in I went to the dressing room and they're standing in the middle of the room, this colossus of a man who from head to foot I adore. And he's managing this team I'm going to play for. And quickly he says, oh, I'm glad you're here, George. You'll slot into with these lads. No bother. What a lovely, he greeted us, like I was a long-lost friend. And such a thrill. I could hardly get my breath, Steve, is the honest answer. I was so besotted with this happening to me. So we went out and we played Whitley Bay in the Senior Cup. And we beat them well and truly. And that's the Wallsend News reporter's report of the game. And there's some of the names on there. Young and Evans made the 3-0, I think, just above the black type. Well, Evans was Reg Evans, who played in the first team then, was an ex-member of the Ends team that won the Youth Cup. FA Youth Cup. And so then the black bit, which obviously is important to me, it says the Whitley attack led by Boyles tried to open up the misscore, several clever moves, but the defence, Newcastle defence, with 15-year-old Mitchell as the star, stood firm. Now, that was always, fantastic. You're 50, you only read that in the paper about yourself. But what I hadn't realised is that it was Norman Smith, the first team trainer, told me. He says, well, do you know where that came from? I says, no. He says, well, the reporter went to Jackie and said, do you want us to say anything particularly in the report of the match? And he says, that's what Jackie Milburn wanted in the report. I says, you're joking. He says, no, George, that's true. That's what Jackie wanted in that report. So, that's an important bit of paper for me and my family.
Fantastic, George. Thank you for sharing that, mate. Absolutely brilliant. Big shout out, as always, to our sponsors, Spider VPN, Spider Miner, worldwide coverage from the lads. The only cryptocurrency miner that can mine 5 different cryptocurrencies at the same time whilst using virtually no energy, and it's VPN protected. Buy yours now at www.miner.spidervpn.org. Thanks to Skips and Bins, telephone 0800 25 45 25 3, email inquiries at skipsandbins.com, website www.skipsandbins.com, easy contract free and pay-as-you-go waste collection. Thanks to L&G Family Funeral Directors, 01913897245, and a Garden of Healing Dispensary, CBD hemp and cannabinoid specialists, www.gohd.com. Thanks to qtechshop.co.uk, the makers of pool tables and snooker tables in Wallsend, Newcastle, and the guys who run our website, NUFCmatters.com. Thanks to ClearKai, meet the new Game Over screen, drop into a ClearRun device near you, available on Apple Store, Google Play, and clearrun.game. Thanks to Mr. Vickies, you can get them at mrvickies.co.uk or on 01768 210 102. And thanks to Media Arts for all the help with the video technology. If you want to subscribe, hit the Newcastle Legends logo in the bottom right-hand corner. We still do 7 shows a week. Hit the thumb up to like the video, click share to your social media, and drop into the comments box to speak to like-minded Newcastle fans. We're also available as a podcast on iTunes, Spotify, and on other podcast providers. Goes up 24 hours after the show. If you want to become a member, then put your smartphone over the QR code. It'll take you straight to the website. Or you can go to NUFCmatters.com and click membership. If you pay your fee, you'll get a cup, a pen, a scarf, and a membership card and entry into the monthly draw. If you're a subscriber, don't forget you can apply for your free car sticker. Just email John at NUFCmatters.com. We do support the food bank on here. NUFC fans, foodbank.co.uk is where you can make a donation to the virtual bucket. And don't forget the raffle for the Alan Shearer ball is still ongoing, $2.99 a ticket. and there's 99 tickets to be had, so you've got to be in it to win it. The Botman t-shirts, don't forget, you can buy them NUFCmatters.com, and other goodies on there, including the Alan Shearer hand-signed t-shirt and mug gift packs. They are £50 each. Don't forget the True Crime podcast tonight. I will be interviewing Robin Perry, the author of I'm the Yorkshire Ripper, which is Conversations with a Killer. Fantastic book, well worth a read, but that will be on this channel at 9 o'clock tonight. Don't forget, a weekend of boxing next Sunday, 12 fights for £50 at the Stadium of Light. Inbox me or contact me on social media if anybody would like some tickets for that. Promises to be a fantastic show. Jimmy will give you the final word. He says, love listening to George. Reminds me of me granddad.
Thank you for that. That's touching. Thank you. Can I thank the sponsors as well? Because without them, I wouldn't be able to enjoy this with Steve and the other things that we do. So thank you for supporting it. It's important to us. Now, I suspect it's more important to fans than people realise.
Yeah.
But that may be just me. Yeah.
George, thanks very much, mate. Look forward to speaking to you again soon. Take care.
Thanks, Steve. See you. Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Bye, everybody.